AITA. My sister thinks $55 covers 2 months of babysitting. After that I refused to babysit anymore until she paid me more. This hurts more than I really want to admit because for the longest time, my sister was the only member of my family I could even mildly tolerate. We were never particularly close, but in a family full of narcissism, entitlement, and manipulation, she was at least the one person I could have a semi-normal conversation with. I thought, maybe, just maybe, she had managed to escape the worst of it. But, I guess, at the end of the day, she is still my mother's daughter. The entitlement was always just under the surface, waiting for the right moment to come clawing out. For some background, my sister and her husband are both essential workers. She's a cop, he's a doctor, and between the two of them, they work absurd hours. With schools closed and daycare out of the question, they needed someone to watch their kids, 2 boys, ages 11 and 8, and they came to me. I work from home, commission-based, so my schedule is flexible, but only in the sense that I can choose which 70 hours a week I want to work. Still, I agreed because, well, family. And at the time, they promised I would be compensated. It was going to be temporary, just until they figured out something more sustainable, but temporary turned into regular and occasional turned into constant. I have been watching these two hellspawn 4 to 6 times a week, anywhere from 7 to 12 hours a day, sometimes longer if they both get caught up at work. I was told, repeatedly, that I would get paid once they got their next paycheck. Then it was when the stimulus check came in. I even have texts where they said they would pay me $85 a week. Now, is that a reasonable rate for 2 out-of-control kids for up to 72 hours a week? Absolutely not. But I figured, again, family. It would be a gesture. Something to show they understood I was giving up my own work, my own time, my own sanity to help them out. So, I waited. The stimulus check came in. My sister handed me $55. Not $85, which was already insulting. $55. When I asked her what the hell this was supposed to be, she looked at me with that self-satisfied smirk I have seen far too many times from our mother and said it was for babysitting. When I reminded her of our agreement, the one I have in writing, she told me I should be grateful because they have been feeding me while I was watching the kids. That was a lie. I have bought my own food every single day. And more often than not, I had to buy food for her kids too, because they would whine and complain that they were hungry and refused to eat whatever scraps were left in their fridge. And by scraps, I mean junk. Processed garbage that barely counts as food, but that was apparently enough for my sister to justify not paying me. She had the audacity to tell me that it was not even real babysitting, that I was just hanging out and playing video games with them. That was the moment I felt my eyes start twitching, because if there is one thing these kids are not, it is easy. They are destructive, boundary-pushing, and downright feral. Every single day is a battle just to keep them from setting something on fire or breaking something expensive. The younger one, the 8-year-old, cannot sit still for more than 30 seconds. If I so much as blink, he is climbing shelves, trying to scale the front door, or straight up bolting into the yard with no shoes, no coat, and no regard for cars flying down the street. The only reason this child is still alive is because I have spent every second of every day chasing after him like a human leash. And the older one? The 11-year-old is already well on his way to becoming the type of person who is banned from family gatherings. He has zero respect for personal property, personal space, or basic human decency. I made the mistake of bringing my gaming laptop over one day because I thought it would keep him occupied. I set very clear rules. He could use the wireless mouse and keyboard, play at the desk, and absolutely, under no circumstances, touch the actual laptop. That lasted about 20 minutes. The second he got bored with the game he had been begging to play, he picked up the laptop and ran through the house with it, laughing like a maniac. Then he tripped. And dropped it. I screamed. I will own that. It was not my best moment, but considering that laptop was worth $1,600 and is literally how I make my living, I feel like my reaction was justified. The little shit had the nerve to roll his eyes at me and say, whatever. Accidents happen, that is why they are called accidents. If it breaks, you can just buy a new one. I told him in no uncertain terms that if it broke, he would be the one replacing it. He laughed. Since that day, he has been an insufferable brat about how I will not bring the laptop anymore. Every time I show up, he whines and pouts like a toddler, saying it is not fair and that I am being mean. On top of the destruction and disrespect, these kids are physically aggressive. They hit, they kick, they throw things. I have had juice boxes launched at my head. I have been punched in the stomach because I said they could not have ice cream for breakfast. I have been scratched, bitten, and called names I will not repeat. And I am supposed to just take it because they are family. Because, that is just how kids are. No, that is how feral children with zero discipline and no consequences are. The only reason I agreed to do any of this was because my sister asked for help. I wanted to help her. I knew her job was hard. I knew her husband's job was hard. I understood they were in a tough spot. But the deal was that I would be compensated. Not fairly, not even close, but something. And instead, I have spent the last however many weeks playing unpaid babysitter, personal chef, therapist, and human punching bag. And the worst part? I cannot even work on my own jobs while I am there because they demand 100% of my attention. Every time I try to pull out my laptop to work, one of them is doing something dangerous or destructive and I have to stop. I am losing money every single day, watching kids who should frankly be in therapy, not my problem. So now I am sitting here, wondering if I would be the asshole if I just stopped showing up. If I ignored the calls and texts until they either paid me what they owe or found someone else to exploit. On one hand, it feels shitty because they do need someone. But on the other hand, I have nothing left to give. These kids are not my responsibility. My sister's entitlement is not my responsibility. And my own financial survival depends on me not spending 70 hours a week getting kicked and screamed at for pocket change. I think I know the answer. But part of me still feels guilty for even considering it. Update 1. I knew the fallout was coming the second I decided I was done. It was one of those moments where the rage simmers under your skin for so long that it just flips over into cold clarity. I didn't even announce it with some grand declaration. I didn't scream or write a dramatic goodbye. I just stopped answering the texts, stopped picking up the calls, and when my sister tried to confirm if I could come over for yet another unpaid 12-hour shift with her feral offspring, I sent a simple, "No, I can't." That was enough to light the match. Within an hour, my phone started vibrating like it was possessed. My sister started with a string of question marks, then escalated into demanding explanations, and by the time I actually dared to look at the messages, she had launched into a full-scale meltdown. I was betraying the family. I was leaving her and her husband to drown. How dare I, as the younger sister, refuse to help when family needed me? And her favorite line, the one my mother used to parrot so often it might as well be stitched onto a throw pillow, "Family is more important than money." She ranted about how I was selfish, ungrateful, and lazy for expecting payment to help my own nephews. She called me a parasite, saying how lucky I was that they had even asked me in the first place because they could have hired a real babysitter who actually knew how to handle kids, and they only asked me because they felt sorry for me, working my fake little online jobs. It was such a flood of manipulation, guilt-tripping, and sheer entitlement that I actually had to put my phone down and walk away for a minute just to process the audacity. But the kicker. The part that really made my blood pressure spike. Her husband chimed in. Up until this point, I had considered him the more reasonable half of that chaotic duo. Sure, he married into this mess, but he always came across as calm, rational, the type of guy who could mediate when my sister was having one of her entitled tantrums. But no. Apparently, behind that calm exterior was just another enabler with a martyr complex. He sent his own little novella, dripping with passive-aggressive resentment. According to him, I was heartless for abandoning them when they were barely making ends meet. He complained that they were sacrificing everything to keep their family afloat and all they asked of me was a little help. Just a few hours here and there. Just some quality time with my nephews, as if I was the one who had been beating down their door begging for access to their unholy spawn. He said they couldn't believe how greedy I had become, putting money above family, above the greater good. And there it was again, that twisted, toxic definition of family that has been weaponized in my family for as long as I can remember. Family, in their eyes, means absolute, unquestioning servitude to anyone with a shred of shared DNA. Family means giving until you are hollowed out and left with nothing, and even then, you should apologize for not offering more. I sat there, reading their messages, feeling that familiar cocktail of anger, exhaustion, and bitter amusement bubbling in my chest. But this time, I didn't swallow it. This time, I didn't let it fester. I opened our old text thread, the one where my sister and I had discussed payment, where she explicitly promised $85 a week regardless of how many shifts I covered, where she said it was only fair because I was giving up my own work time. I took screenshots of every single message, made sure the timestamps were crystal clear, and I sent them to both her and her husband in the family group chat. I added one line, nothing dramatic, nothing emotional. Just, this isn't about family. This is about the promises you made and didn't keep. I didn't wait for a response because I already knew there wouldn't be one. When you shine a light on that level of entitlement, they don't respond with logic or accountability. They don't apologize or reflect. They retaliate. That's the only language they know. Sure enough, about half an hour later, I got a notification from Facebook. I had been removed from the family group chat. That was it. No final word. No last-ditch attempt to guilt me back into compliance. Just the digital equivalent of slamming the door in my face. And I should be upset, right? I should be heartbroken, or at least disappointed. But the truth is, I felt something so much better. Relief. Pure, unfiltered relief. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't staring down the barrel of another day spent playing human shield between two screaming goblins and the world around them. I didn't have to brace myself for getting hit, kicked, screamed at, or guilt into buying more food because their parents couldn't be bothered to stock the kitchen. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat down at my desk. And for the first time in weeks, I calmly sat down to work without fear that someone will climb on the chandelier or throw a toy car at my head. Update 2. The silence from my sister after the family group chat purge lasted a few days, and I let myself hope, foolishly, I realize now, that maybe that silence would stretch into something resembling peace. The kind of peace that comes when the dust settles after a long overdue explosion. The kind of peace you get when you're no longer required to constantly defend your own existence against the emotional parasites you happen to share DNA with. But in my family, silence is never silence. It's just a countdown. The call came mid-morning, just when I was starting to feel the tightness in my chest ease up. I saw the caller ID and for a brief, fleeting second, I considered not answering. But not answering my mother always comes with a price. Ignoring the call would only lead to more calls, followed by texts, followed by increasingly unhinged voicemails until the sheer weight of her persistence crushed any hope of getting through my day without her voice in my ear. So I answered. The tone was familiar, so familiar that it felt like stepping back into a version of myself I thought I had outgrown. That saccharine, syrupy sweetness, the performative care layered over something metallic and sharp. It was the voice she always used when she was about to tell me exactly how I had disappointed her, but wanted to dress it up as motherly concern. She said she had heard about my breakdown, not the situation, not the blatant exploitation, but my breakdown, as if my refusal to be treated like free labor was some embarrassing public tantrum instead of a rational boundary. She said it was time for me to apologize to my sister for my ingratitude, for my selfishness, for my complete lack of respect for family obligations. In her mind, there was no room for discussion about the reality of what had happened, only the narrative that had already solidified between her and my sister. I was the ungrateful younger sibling, the selfish little girl who didn't understand what it meant to be there for family. Every sentence was coated with that familiar guilt-tripping varnish, polished to a high shine after years of practice. She called it a wonderful life experience for me, said that learning to deal with children would be useful for me in the future, like unpaid emotional labor at the expense of my financial survival was some kind of wholesome after-school special designed to build character. It was the same line she had always fed me every time my sister dumped her problems in my lap. It was good for me. It would make me a better woman. It would teach me skills I would need when I had a family of my own, because of course, in her eyes, my only purpose in life was to become someone's wife and mother. I couldn't stop myself. The words came out before I even thought about them. I asked her, point blank, if she even understood that I had been promised payment. That I had sacrificed my own income, my own work, my own stability, because I was told I would be compensated. That I had been lied to, strung along, and left to clean up the emotional and physical mess of two children who had never been disciplined a day in their lives, while my own bills stacked up and my own work went undone. Her response was so classically her, so perfectly emblematic of why this situation was always doomed, that it almost made me laugh. Money, she said, was not the main thing when it came to family. Money didn't matter. Not when family needed you. Not when your sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, was struggling. And besides, she added, if money was so important to me, my sister would probably throw me something when she could. Not pay me what was promised. Not honor the agreement we had. Just throw me something, like tossing scraps to a begging dog under the table. That was the moment the final piece clicked into place. All my life, every interaction with my family has been a transaction where I am expected to pay. My time, my money, my energy, my sanity, all debts I owe simply because I had the audacity to be born into this family. Every request comes wrapped in layers of obligation, every refusal treated like treason. It doesn't matter if I'm right. It doesn't matter if I'm drowning. It doesn't even matter if I am physically incapable of doing what they want. All that matters is that I pay my debt to them, over and over again, until there is nothing left of me. There was nothing left to say. There was no point in arguing with someone so steeped in the mythology of family loyalty that the concept of fairness doesn't even register. I had spent years hoping for some flicker of understanding, some acknowledgement that I was my own person and not just the family's emotional pack mule. That hope died the moment she said throw me something. It was never going to be different. It was always going to end like this. I hung up the phone without even saying goodbye. Update 3. 2 weeks passed after I officially stopped answering their calls, their texts, their guilt-laden voicemails. 2 weeks of silence that felt equal parts uncomfortable and liberating. Years of conditioning made that silence feel wrong, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, but there was also relief in it, the relief of stepping off the hamster wheel of constant emotional labor. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach still clenched, but when it wasn't them, I felt that tension start to unravel, thread by thread. And then, out of nowhere, I received a PayPal notification. The name attached was my brother-in-law's, the amount was $2,500, and there was no message. No subject line, no note, no passive-aggressive justification. Just money. A lump sum, sitting there in my account like an uninvited guest. My first reaction wasn't joy or relief, it was anger so sharp it almost felt like nausea. It was such a clear admission of guilt, a silent confession wrapped in digital currency. They knew they had screwed me over. They knew they had used me, lied to me, drained me dry, and now they were trying to buy my silence after the fact. It was the financial equivalent of shoving hush money into my hands and slamming the door. No accountability, no acknowledgement of how they treated me, no apology. Just a transaction to make the inconvenience of me go away. The amount itself was infuriating in its own way. $2,500 wasn't some random sum they pulled out of thin air, it was close enough to what they probably thought they owed me if they had ever bothered to calculate all those weeks of unpaid labor. They knew exactly what they did. They knew the hours I lost, the damage to my work, the sheer mental and emotional exhaustion they inflicted. They knew it down to the dollar, but they were too proud, too steeped in their own bullshit, to ever say it out loud. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands shaking with the force of all the emotions swirling inside me. Anger, resentment, exhaustion, but also, underneath it all, the aching need for something I was never going to get. A real apology. Not money, not silence, but someone in my family actually looking me in the eye and admitting they were wrong. Admitting they treated me like disposable trash. Admitting they used me and they knew it and they were sorry. But that's not how my family works. In my family, money is the band-aid slapped over every wound, and silence is the apology you're supposed to accept. That evening, as if on cue, my sister's name popped up on my phone again. Another message, another essay-length justification that I knew before even opening it would be full of the same self-serving garbage I'd been hearing my whole life. And of course, I was right. She wrote that she still didn't understand why I was so offended. She said it over and over, like she genuinely believed she was the victim in all this, the poor, overworked sister who just asked for a little help and got stabbed in the back for her trouble. She reminded me that we were family, that families help each other, that it wasn't supposed to be a business arrangement. She twisted every broken promise, every manipulation, into a life lesson I was supposed to be grateful for. Apparently, being emotionally and financially exploited was a gift, because it taught me patience and responsibility. She had the gall to paint herself as some kind of benevolent teacher, someone who had done me a favor by forcing me into the role of unpaid nanny and human stress ball. According to her, I should be thankful for the time I spent with her children because it prepared me for real life, as if my own life, my work, my time, my boundaries, didn't count as real until she needed something from me. But the last part was the cherry on top. She admitted the money was transferred not because I deserved it, not because they were wrong, not because they owed me, but because she didn't want me spreading gossip about her greed. That was it. That was her version of closure, not an apology, not even a hint of self-reflection, just a preemptive bribe to keep me quiet. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Anything I sent would have been twisted into more proof that I was the ungrateful, selfish problem child, so I did the only thing left that made sense. I blocked her. I blocked her husband. I erased their numbers from my phone, took myself off every family group chat, muted every reminder that they even existed. And then I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, the same laptop I had to repair at my own expense after her child sent it crashing to the floor, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again.